The U.S. weaponization of trade, imposition of sanctions, and exclusion from the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication may hasten de-dollarization, as countries demonstrating diplomatic and economic autonomy will be wary of using U.S.-dominated global banking systems. The U.S. dollar, the world's reserve currency, may continue to fall in value in the current environment as leading central banks seek to diversify their reserves away from it and into other assets or currencies, such as the euro, renminbi, or gold. The concept of de-dollarization fits well in the thought experiment of a multipolar world in which each country seeks economic autonomy in the realm of monetary policy. So, is de-dollarization really achievable? What has been done toward this end? And what can Brics do to achieve this seemingly impossible task? Stay tuned and be kept up to date. Remember that subscribing and activating the bell notification feature will make you stay up to date with business, history, international relations, geopolitics, and world affairs shaping the global climate and our civilization. So, what exactly is de-dollarization? For many years, the dollar was the standard currency in international trade. Oil, gold, and most commodities, for example, are quoted in dollars. Many countries keep their reserves in the form of U.S. Treasury securities, which are held by many countries. De-dollarization refers to a shift from this world order to one in which nations sell U.S. treasuries to hold reserves in other currencies or gold, and seek to use their own currencies for transactions with their most important trading partners. De-dollarization is the process of substituting the U.S. dollar as the currency for trading oil and other commodities, as well as purchasing U.S. dollars for forex reserves, bilateral trade agreements, and dollar-denominated assets. The dollar's dominant role in the global economy gives the United States disproportionate influence over other economies. The United States has long used sanctions to achieve foreign policy objectives. The desire to insulate the central banks of the countries from geopolitical risks, where the status of the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency can be used as an offensive weapon, is driving the de-dollarization. What are the roots of the dollar's power? In the early 1970s, the U.S. dollar solidified its position with an agreement with the oil-rich Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to conduct global energy trade in dollars. The collapse of the Bretton Woods system elevated the dollar's status. It effectively eliminated other developed market currencies from competing with the USD. Currently, the USD accounts for approximately 60% of the central bank's foreign exchange reserves and 70% of global trade. The psychological aspect of viewing the USD as a safe haven asset is that people continue to regard it as a relatively risk-free asset. Furthermore, the sudden dumping of dollar assets by adversarial central banks will put their balance sheets at risk by eroding the value of their overall dollar-denominated holdings. Apart from the euro and gold, most other foreign currencies carry some inherent risk. For example, when the historically neutral Switzerland joins the EU in imposing sanctions on Russia, the Swiss franc ceases to be an asset that can be used as a hedge against economic sanctions. Now let's discuss the efforts Spring invested toward de-dollarization. De-dollarization is not a new phenomenon, but it is a difficult policy to implement. To be successful, de-dollarization necessitates a number of carefully calibrated economic, legislative, regulatory, fiscal, and political implementation measures. The de-dollarization movements in Chile and Israel demonstrate the complexities. Chile's experience, on the one hand, has been centered on the introduction of indexed instruments to entice investors away from dollar-denominated assets. The majority of instruments were indexed to the Consumer Price Index via the creation of the Unidad de Fomento, or US. The success of these instruments can be explained by the US credibility. Chile was confident that it would not suffer a sudden loss of value, but it also understood that indexation alone would not be sufficient. Indexation must be accompanied by the development of secondary financial markets for these instruments, strong legal support for the indexation unit, and common indexation measures. With regulatory encouragement, institutional investors, such as pension funds and insurance companies, are required to invest a large portion of their portfolio in local instruments. Finally, monetary policy had to prioritize price stability by targeting inflation. A clear mandate on the reduction of inflation demonstrated that policy. The policy package reduced investor uncertainty and macroeconomic volatility. Another successful example of dollarization is Israel. There has been no direct attempt to de-dollarize the economy, but since the 1990s, there has been an active policy in this direction when deciding on the currency composition of public sector issuance in a conscious effort to deepen the market for local currency-denominated government bonds. Higher interest payments by the public sector have come at a cost, particularly during a period of high real interest rates. However, as the disinflationary program was successful and inflation finally fell into the single digits, the costs were reduced year after year. Israel's debt was nominalized first through consumer price indexation and then without any indexation. At the same time, Israel extended the maturity of its public debt, although there is not necessarily a trade-off between the currency of composition and the maturity of public debt. The central bank has been very active in promoting financial derivatives and other instruments to insure against exchange rate risk. The Bank of Israel was most likely the first emerging country to implement inflation targeting, which, like Chile, anchors expectations and reduces investors' uncertainty about local currency assets. Trade sanctions are increasingly being used to supplement or replace military efforts as an extension of international reach. Trade sanctions have been used for purposes other than military action in the 21st century. It is important to note that the de-dollarization process has gained even more traction since the start of the trade war between the United States and China. The Trump administration used them against allies to protect the U.S. economy, as well as bargaining chips in trade negotiations. The EU has done the same, indicating that such measures would be taken to enforce the Brexit agreement. Such actions, or threats to such actions, encourage bilateral agreements and trade in national currencies. Now, what's being done to reduce the influence of dollar-centered global payments infrastructure? The People's Bank of China announced a joint venture with the Belgian-based financial messaging service, the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications, or SWIFT, in 2021. SWIFT is a global messaging system that is used to facilitate cross-border financial transactions. The GV intends to build a data center in China with a localized network that connects to the main SWIFT network. The facility provides the Chinese government with the ability to monitor and control cross-border payments. China's current de-dollarization efforts place a premium on the creation of a digital currency. This initiative aims to create a domestic payment system that can be used globally. The initiative advances China's efforts to develop alternatives to the United States' global economic, financial, trade, and technology networks. This effort complements China's expansion of national security economic authorities, which includes new export controls and sanctions legislation. China and Russia have reduced their reliance on the dollar over the last decade, but both countries, like most others, rely heavily on it. China has substantial dollar reserves. The renminbi, or RMB, is traded freely in foreign exchange markets, accounting for 3%–4% of global forex. The limited use of RMBs in cross-border transactions limits China's overall de-dollarization efforts. The Russian ruble is not widely used outside of Russia. Traditional global energy markets, Russia's main exports, are denominated in dollars. However, if de-dollarization efforts gain traction, there may be consequences for the U.S. economy, U.S. sanctions, and U.S. global economic leadership. To summarize, dollarization is no longer an unavoidable and largely insignificant consequence of international trade. Countries should examine dollarization more closely and develop a comprehensive and well-coordinated policy agenda to address dollarization and its risks. Because no other currency is liquid enough, the US dollar remains the preferred currency for trade. Even if a currency does exist, nations will be concerned that it will become a mirror image of the US dollar. A simple regime change with the same manipulations, albeit from a different country, is not what the world wants. The only way forward is to diversify the currency market so that no single currency claims hegemony. And now, let us hear from you. Can Brics succeed to achieve de-dollarization? If so, then what strategy can be implemented? Share your thoughts and opinions in the comments section below. And if you have any suggestions for us, then comment below. And that concludes today's discussion. Kindly return the favor by liking, subscribing, and activating the bell notification feature to stay up to date with business, history, international relations, geopolitics, and world affairs shaping the global climate and our civilization. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.